So for those of you who don't know my story, I'm going to tell it to you really quickly. So I was the Chief Learning Officer for Qualcomm for almost 24 years, and I know many of you in this room, although I can't see you all. When I started at Qualcomm in 1992, I was 5 years old, and there were 700 employees there. And when I left 8 months ago, there were 32,000. So let me just tell you, I've seen scale. And I've seen what really impacts successful companies. You know, there are two key things. One is leadership, and the other is execution. And as learning leaders, we have huge impact on leadership within the organization and huge impact around execution of our business. I left my role at Qualcomm to join a really interesting startup in the mobile app space. Well, let me be really honest with you, and I don't know if you're videotaping this, but it was a complete shit show, okay? So I realized that, you know, a 450-person organization is going to do great if I'm there to really help build leaders and build the business. But when I'm terminating people and when I'm shutting down offices, that's not my best self. And so 3 months ago, I joined a venture firm called Atlantic Bridge. And what I'm doing there is really interesting work. I'm their chief talent officer. And what I'm doing is working with all of their different portfolio companies. So we have about 20 different companies in our portfolio. I work with all of the CEOs building successful organizations. Some of these companies are 16 people, some are hundreds. And we're investing in them. And so my role is to really look at talent and start to grow the business. So let me share with you a little bit about what I've learned and a little bit about what I'm doing. We as learning officers do not own content. And we are not managing learning. When I started learning and development in 1992, and there were 700 employees at Qualcomm, I was managing content. I owned it, I purchased it, I moved it across the organization, I had training manuals, I had trainers. I was really in charge of content for the organization. What I've realized is we don't own that anymore. Content is everywhere. The number one place that people go to get content and information is where? Google search. Anybody going to Yahoo anymore? Not because of the hacking, right? So nobody's going to Yahoo. But you go to Google or you go to Bing, right? Where's the second place you go? YouTube, okay, your neighbor. YouTube is also in there, but your neighbor. When you want to learn how to do something, who do you ask? The person next to you. You want to download an app, you want to learn how to do something, you go ask them. You go ask your neighbor, how do I deal with a difficult employee? Hey, you don't wait for my learning content in there. You go ask your neighbor. You go do a search on that. So as learning leaders, we need to really think about what we need to do differently today. We don't manage content, and we can't manage learning anymore. Our role is really around talent. Our role is around creating an employee experience. We are bigger than L&D. We are about embedding company culture, who we are as a company, what are the norms, what are the behaviors within the organization. We are problem solvers, business problem solvers, right? How many times have any of you gotten into a room and they go, I need a training course? You don't really need a training course. What you really need is a systems issue that we need to solve. What you really need is a new leader. What you really need is something else that is really not about training. So think about how you can become a better problem solver within the organization and a coach. Most of the days I spent as CLO were around coaching executives, coaching leaders to become better, coaching employees, solving a problem within the business. Yes, there's a learning component around that, but I'm not a learning manager. I'm not a chief learning officer, I'm a talent officer. And all of us in this room are really elevating ourselves in 2016 and beyond to really be looking at how we're managing talent. The other piece is around this user-generated content. There's a lot of tools and technology out there, awesome. We need to make sure that we're getting all of that content, that YouTube information, what they're searching for in Google or in Bing, what they're looking at online, what they're doing with their neighbor. We need to collect that information and share it across the organization. It's really important to do that. We at Qualcomm are utilizing PathGather. We are very happy with that as a way to get all of that user-generated content and get it back out to our employee base. Follow paths of great leaders. We all in our own organizations know who the best leaders are. Go get their information and start to publish it. We all know who the best engineers are, the best salespeople. Go get their information and publish it. Share that information with your employee base. And then the last is if we really think about how we leverage talent, we're about employee engagement. We're about making sure that employees are highly productive and that we have higher performance than everyone else. That's critically important as we look at managing talent. Our value is so much bigger than L&D. The problem that we have is when we're moving so fast, we lose sight of that. So I'm going to encourage all of you, when you go back to your offices, not to lose sight of that. Don't live in the narcissism of the moment. The person asking you for the training class, the person asking you to deliver something specific. Think bigger than that. Think about, how am I impacting talent in this organization? Let me look at the bigger picture. This is how I've been building a talent ecosystem, and this is a lot of what I did at Qualcomm and what I've been taking to the other role that I'm in right now. We have 3 key pieces. One is assessment, the other is development, and the third is rewards. We own all of these pieces as chief talent officers in our organizations. We have to go in and assess parts of the business. We need to focus on how we're going to develop people and systems within the organization, and those are bigger than just training. Yes, I have formal learning programs in there because we're still going to do that. But there are other opportunities, not just online learning. There are other opportunities in here. Mentoring and coaching and assimilating, critically important as we really think about a talent role beyond a learning role. And then the third one is rewards. And I think a lot of people in organizations believe that it's about being the head of HR, the head of compensation. I don't manage rewards. BS. You do. The rewards are part of the system that you're in, the entire talent system. And so based on that, you do have a role in performance management, and it's called development. It's called reinforcement. It's about trying to find new opportunities for people to get rewarded within your organization and to get recognized. And you do own that. So don't do a disservice to yourself and think that that is somebody else's. We own this entire talent ecosystem as learning leaders. To be relevant today, we need to focus on talent, culture, and that entire employee experience. That means the day that somebody joins the organization or signs that offer letter, that's when you start with onboarding, all the way through the entire life cycle of when they're potentially going to that retirement cliff, but hopefully still being an ambassador of your company later on. We own that entire experience and all of those pieces. This is how we really impact talent. And I'm going to take you through these metrics because I think these are really important. One is about equality to access of resources. A lot of people today talk about a diversity agenda. I think it's critically important. Make sure that everything you have is being utilized by everybody within your organization, right? Whether they're geographically dispersed or whether there's a diversity component, it doesn't matter. You need to make sure that there's equal usage and access across all of your resources. Voluntary turnover. We also are responsible for making sure that we retain great talent in our organizations. That's one of the metrics that we should be using all the time to demonstrate the value of what we're doing on talent. The third is around development received by employees. Are you measuring how development is received in your organization? Is that higher than industry benchmarks? Benchmarking is critically important. One of the ways that Qualcomm got to be a best learning organization was because we were doing constant benchmarking. It's important to talk to your neighbors, find out what people are doing. I loved the opportunity to hear about what SAP is doing and what Sears is doing because it broadens your perspective. You don't have to work in a lot of different organizations to learn what other people are doing. Use those opportunities and use them to your advantage to share with your executive team. Access to tools and resources. Really important that around the world you provide lots of different learning opportunities. Whether they're online, whether they're in person, whether they're through webinars, it doesn't matter, but it's about access to information, and that needs to be across the board on all of your different talent parts. And then this other one around manager quality is so important. Managers need to be promoting career development across your organization. Managers are critically responsible. The number one reason that an employee stays in an organization today is career growth. You're responsible for career growth. As learning leaders, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to make sure that we're growing the careers of our employees because that's going to keep them within the organization. I've read a lot of studies about millennials because it's so important. Millennials make up 35% of the workforce today. 5 years ago, it was 25%. It's going to be 40% and 45%. They're coming. The number one thing they want is training and development. I've seen it firsthand. I had a number of employees in my organization. They were 22 years old, wanted to be VPs, wanted to make $1 million. I said, hold on, time out. You need some development and growth. Really, how do I get that? They are hungry for it. They are coming to your organizations. And it's really important to think about how are you going to help them develop in their own careers. Management accountability is also critically important, and it's really important that we focus on holding managers accountable not only for growth and development, accountable for results, business results. And that's an impact that we have as talent leaders in the organization. Engagement. How many of you here want high levels of employee engagement across your organization? Okay, don't raise your hands. It's got to be everybody, right? We all want highly engaged employees. We need to make sure that we're looking at metrics and measurements around how to do that in our organizations. And then the last one is employees committed to company success, right? So if this was Qualcomm data, so 97%, those 3% we had to figure out who they were within the organization, right? But 97% of the employees were committed to company success. That's an amazing metric. Get this metric. Many of you are utilizing company-wide surveys for employee satisfaction. You're utilizing pulse surveys across the company. Think about your talent metrics and getting that data. As you're rolling out your surveys and as you're getting your pulse information, try to figure out how are you going to leverage the data on talent. So the last thing I want to share with you, because I've been living in Silicon Valley, living the dream in Silicon Valley, and I've seen a lot of very interesting companies and some real talent innovators. Most of them would never come to a conference like this because they're small companies who are really trying to disrupt the talent market. I think there may be one or two of them that are actually here because I told them to come. But I want to share with you just a few, in my mind, emerging companies who are really going to transform what we're doing with the talent agenda. These are the 6 that I'm going to talk to you about for just a minute. The first one is GuideSpark. Anybody in here ever hear of GuideSpark? A few people. Okay, very interesting organization. Again, Silicon Valley. GuideSpark is a company that is working on, I will say it very plainly, workplace communications. And what they're doing is they're building ways to communicate messages to your employee base ongoing. So it could be training, it could be compensation, it could be a new program, it could be change management, it could be culture. Anything. They create videos around that, wrappers around what you're doing to communicate ongoing to employees. Amazing potential. A lot of the Fortune 100s are utilizing it primarily for benefits communication. They're revolutionizing the way that communications is being done in organizations. Take a look at it. The other one I want to mention is study.com. Any of you in here do tuition assistance for your organizations, managing tuition assistance programs, right? Well, we were at Qualcomm spending $52.50 per employee on that annually, right? And I think for our graduate level students, we were spending $10,500. Study.com does it for half the cost. So if you think about your employees who want a degree, they can utilize study.com, get a subscription to that, take as many courses they want for $1,000 instead of the $52.50. Could have saved me tons of money if I would have known about this organization. I think the study.com people may be here. If you want to raise your hands, people maybe know who you are. They can find out more. Third is Culture Amp. Anybody here hear of Culture Amp? Okay, Culture Amp is around employee surveys. Very interesting. A lot of the Bay Area is utilizing it. It's pulse surveys, trying to get lots of data. So that impact data that I showed you, those metrics, Culture Amp is creating surveys specifically around metrics around talent. Super interesting organization, really progressive in the space. Reflective. Anybody here of Reflective? Performance management, new way to do performance management and get feedback from your employees. Super interesting. We did look at it at Qualcomm. We did not end up implementing it, but for a lot of these smaller organizations, it's taking off, and I'm telling you, it's transforming what we're doing in performance management. Gap jumpers. Anybody here of gap jumpers? Okay, there's a lot of issues today around bias, right? Gap jumpers is a recruiting tool that enables you, kind of like The Voice TV show, that enables you not to see who the person is on the other end. So you can't make any adverse impact, judgment, or decision on the person. What you're seeing is specifically just the information that they have from a skill set standpoint, but you don't know their gender, you don't know their age, you don't know their ethnicity, you know nothing, and that's the way you're making hiring decisions. Super interesting as a way to manage diversity and make sure there's equity across your organization. And then the last one is Jolt US. Anyone ever hear of Jolt? Okay, super new. I don't even know if they're, more than a couple hundred people at this point. But interestingly, Jolt, I got a number of different calls from them. They are aggregating content and information from just executives across organizations. So They have, for example, a product manager at Google who shares their information about how to manage product. They have a manager at Facebook who says, I'm a great manager, and I'm going to tell you about how to be a great manager. They're taking user-generated content and essentially giving it out to people for a subscription. Very interesting to go look at Jolt US. So these are the big talent innovators in my mind, the people that are disrupting the space. If they're not here today, go take a look at them online. But in my mind, we as talent leaders need to be aware of what's coming. These are disruptors, and I believe that at the end of the day, all of us are not just managing learning, but we are managing talent in our companies. So good luck.